The story begins, where there are majestic Karel mountains, endless blue sky beneath crowded houses that are crowded together, that is the frontier territory of Khazad-dûm. But deep inside is desolation, a severe drought has swept across the land. People's lives are extremely different from the dead people lying in every alley. The withered man's face looked down in disappointment at the dry well. The once verdant fields are now cracked and parched. Animals, lifeless, are dying along the roadsides. And the terrified people are fleeing. Suddenly, someone appears, blocking their escape. The Marquis considers this a grave offense. Soldiers in armor, with sinister smiles, stand like an impassable wall. The Marquis orders his soldiers to punish them, and a bloody massacre ensues. Innocent people, their faces pale with terror, scatter and flee. Their thin, bare feet tirelessly pound the earth. But unfortunately, a boy stumbles and is captured by the brutal soldiers. The trembling boy, his eyes wide and white, slowly looks back. He shouted in vain for someone to save me. In those pitiful eyes, the image of a soldier smiling happily brandishing his sword appeared in his direction. And then, without a miracle, a spray of blood erupts. The leader of this carnage is the Marquis's son. He stands aside, arms crossed, watching the deaths with refined amusement. This man, a powerful sorcerer with the blood of sacred kings in his veins, suddenly erupts in anger, gnashing his teeth. He scolds, "Even wild beasts know gratitude. You bastards, do you know why you're still alive?" he said, clutching his chest in pain. Then he roars, "It is by our grace, the grace of those with sacred blood." A terrified woman, holding her child, sits opposite him. He frowns, his voice hardening, "And yet, because of a drought, you flee. How dare you show such disrespect?" The woman cries, terrified, "I'm so sorry, please spare my child." Before she finishes, a brutal soldier impales her with his spear like a piece of meat. The soldier shouts angrily, "Shut up." The child's eyes widen in horror as he sees his mother impaled. He freezes, speechless. In an instant, the woman dies, collapsing in a pool of blood. The boy stares, dumbfounded. The Marquis's son shakes his head, feigning pity. "How careless, you've spoiled the fun." The soldier chuckles, "Forgive my stupidity, young master." With a sly tone, the soldier asks, "What can we do to amuse you more, my lord?" He smirks. Before them, villagers are being hanged from dry branches. Watching a woman weep and cling to her husband's legs, he exclaims with glee, "Yes, this is it, parents supporting their children, wives supporting their husbands." As he revels in the scene, someone calls from behind, "Young master." A soldier is brutally kicking a man's face. He grins and turns, asking, "This one's been stabbed, should I tie a rope around his waist? Otherwise, he'll die before we can enjoy ourselves. Shouldn't he at least last as long as the others?" A blonde girl, tears welling in her eyes, whispers, "No." Frantically, she rushes towards the soldiers leading away her husband, pleading, "Please, no." They didn't respect her for being a woman, so they directly physically punched that beautiful face and shouted loudly to get out. The girl touches her aching cheek and cries in helpless despair. Seeing his wife beaten, the weak man lifts his head and calls her name, but can do nothing. She runs to embrace her husband's legs. The leader laughs maniacally, "Ha ha." He sneers, "Truly spectacular." He praises, "You did well, village girl." He reminds her, "Support him well, understand." He leans closer to the girl and whispers in her ear. A sinister threat, "Your beloved's arteries will burst, killing him." The girl trembles before his power. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out, "Don't take the blood of the sacred kings so lightly." He freezes for a moment. He slowly turns. A man with platinum blonde hair, wearing an elegant blue cloak, approaches. He recovers his composure and laughs mockingly, "Oh, look who it is, Lord Zebek, isn't it?" He approaches, the atmosphere growing tense. He grins sarcastically, "My old sword instructor, I see." Zebek remains cold. "Is it necessary to go this far to punish the people? a nobleman inheriting the blood of the sacred kings should at least maintain his dignity. He sneers triumphantly, won't my dignity remain intact if nothing of this gets out? He looked at the people hanging on the tree and felt satisfied that these bastards dared to stain my dignity just because it hadn't rained for a long time, so they became like that. He looked at him with teasing eyes and continued, so what are you going to do? Are you going to spread the news about what we did, Mr. Zebek? He fell silent, not answering. The other man, emboldened by his silence, continued his provocative challenge. A holy night, recognized by the king's church, dare you stain the honor of the one you claim carries the precious Karel blood? He hung his head, explaining, I simply want to say that the truth cannot be hidden forever. He crossed his arms, looking perplexed. Suddenly, a soldier whispered in his ear, we'll take care of him, but the man ignored him, disdainfully ordering, forget it, bring the whip. Give it to me. Truly, a magnificent sight. The soldier obediently and quickly handed over the whip. After receiving the whip, without a word, he transformed into a raging brute, lashing it at the woman. Each strike tore her flesh, causing her agonizing pain. She screamed. Zebek, witnessing this, was horrified. A bloody memory flickered in his mind. Returning to reality, the villain, exhausted, wiped the sweat from his face and laughed loudly, ha. His vile face grinned with pleasure. The woman, still enduring, clung to her husband's legs, trembling with pain. He sneered, truly, a magnificent sight. Suddenly, he turned towards Zebek. He leaned close to his ear, whispering with a laugh, come on, teacher. The other's eyes narrowed, bloodshot with excitement. We should enjoy life, shouldn't we? Seeing the innocent people hanging before him, but unable to do anything, Zebek stood rooted to the spot for a long time, dazed. As dusk settled, no one dared to help in that pitiful scene. The ropes tightened around their necks, making the scene even more brutal. Below, corpses lay rotting. The man, using his last weak breath, softly called, Safia. His voice trembled, I was wrong, please, run away. The woman, unwilling to leave, clung tighter to him. Finally, no more words came. Noticing something, she cried out, Ifan. In that moment of despair, she pulled out a gold coin with a star engraved on it. She murmured, the Emperor's messengers. Her heart ached as she looked away expectantly. She took a gentle step, softly asking, they will really come? She closed her eyes, prayed, and slowly fainted. Night had fallen. The surrounding space was deathly silent. The woman, who had fainted some time ago, was suddenly offered water. A moment later, she coughed and awoke. Her eyes opened slowly, a look of astonishment on her face. She softly asked, who are you? It was Zebek. He quietly urged her to remain silent. She wondered, who are you? He kindly asked, can you eat? He scooped up a spoonful of food and offered it to her. She remained silent, her face full of doubt about his appearance. After an unknown amount of time, she slept soundly on the cold ground. The morning light illuminated her wounded body, making the injuries even more apparent. Zebek sat leaning against a tree, lost in thought. He looked up at the sky, feeling helpless. After a moment of contemplation, he went over and gently woke her. Come on. She weakly opened her eyes. Zebek quickly left, not forgetting to remind her, keep quiet, I came here secretly, and I must return. If the young master finds out, I'll be punished. After a few steps, he paused, slowly saying, and about your husband? You don't need to worry about him anymore. He's gone. His lifeless body hangs there, terrifying. Her face was pale, bloodless. The woman's eyes widened in shock. She still couldn't accept the truth. She dazedly dropped her stick. Zebek looked over with a perplexed expression. She stubbornly clung to her husband's legs, refusing to let go. After suppressing her grief, she coldly asked, tell me your name, I'll ask the messengers to spare you when they arrive. Hearing that, Zebek was also slightly surprised and asked the messenger association, do you mean that she is a sacred star that kills soulless pagans? She contacted them. Before his questioning, the girl, her face filled with sadness, slumped down. Then she recounted, I don't know if they truly exist, but even if they come, I have 2 fully armed soldiers under my command, and me. She added, and the young master carries blue blood. Zebek's face remained unchanged. He asked further, I believe you know how extraordinary the sacred bloodline of the Yaegas is, don't you? The girl's eyes blazed with hatred. She resolutely said, even if he's a mage from the emissaries, they have the power to kill him, because they are mages too. Furrowing her brow, she insisted, the reason they're called sacred death spirits is because they were given that name after killing kings with sacred bloodlines, isn't it? Zebek ran a hand through his hair in frustration. He exclaimed, you're not thinking clearly, anyone who goes through something like that would suffer psychological trauma. He extended his hand, gently introducing himself, I am Zebek, a holy knight of the king's church. I'm not revealing my name for you to beg the sacred death spirits for mercy. Hearing this, the girl stared at him, bewildered. Zebek clenched his fist, powerfully declaring, if they come, I will fight them with everything I have. Having said that, he left, not forgetting to promise, I'll be back tonight. She watched his back, silently and pitifully. Her eyes flashed with a glimmer of hope. She muttered, 2 days. She looked down at the roughly drawn triangle on the ground, her hope intense. She thought, just 2 more days. The bright sunlight shone on the peaceful village, streaming through the windows. Ivan gave his wife a coin, a gift for you, Safia. They sat under the cool shade of a tree. She was curious about the coin. What is it? Ivan looked at Safia with tender eyes. Safia, have you ever heard of the emissaries? She looked up at the sky, understanding his words. Oh, when I was little, father mentioned them in stories. They're the sacred death spirits and soulless beings, right? He looked at the gleaming gold coin in his hand. Yes, this is the Emperor's gold coin, it can revive soulless beings. But suddenly, Ivan leaned close to her ear and whispered, but be careful if you possess it. The words were ominous, a warning to Safia, the heretic inquisitors of the king's church will execute you. So that's why he whispered. Ivan kissed Safia's cheek, making her blush crimson. Safia shyly pushed him away. Having kissed her cheek, he smiled slyly and happily. She furrowed her brows, questioning, wait, why would you give me something so dangerous? Ivan looked up and smiled gently, I gave it to you just in case. Under the shade of the tree, he worried about their future, if something happens to us. Legend says if you draw a triangle on the ground and stand in the center, an emissary will come and help you, though I hope it never comes to that. Scene change, the setting sun shone on the triangle drawn on the ground. Before the triangle, a Karel-heeled boot stood silently. Safia held her husband's body, which was hanging from a tree, her heart filled with bitterness. Her face was scratched, and she whispered, 2 days, only 2 days. She was trying to hold on to her husband's body, preventing him from falling, just for today. The sun shone brightly through the dry branches. If I try to hold on. The intense heat of the sun brought no breeze. Safia, exhausted, collapsed to the ground, unable to hold her husband any longer. She lay helplessly on the ground, her eyes vacant. The scorching heat seemed to be burning the flag atop the watchtower. The soldiers were cooling themselves in the water under the scorching sun. Zebek stood among the dry trees, looking up at a cloudless sky. He sighed inwardly, the heat is unusual today. While looking at the sky, someone approached and called, Sir. Zebek irritably turned to see Kuzel approaching, smiling, cheer up, isn't it fun? He replied softly, if we kill the people, we can't collect taxes. He placed his hand on a piece of cloth held by a servant and said with a smirk, the unsatisfied wanderers are leaving, while theft is increasing. Zebek's hand involuntarily clenched in anger at those words. Within the Marquis' territory, there are fertile areas where we can evacuate the people. Why are children born in fertile lands? He looked at the soldiers carrying buckets of water to cool themselves, suffering because of those wicked, unprincipled people. Kuzel frowned in annoyance and said, I'm talking about those who will destroy agriculture and run away. The distance between the two people seemed to shorten, the atmosphere became tense. Farming relied on personal skills, it relied on the king's land, weather, and light. Kuzzle let out a sinister smile. Didn't the king and the church teach that? Zebek looked down at the ground with vacant eyes, silent and unresponsive. He smiled with a cunning face. The reason they face drought is because they lack faith in the king's church, isn't that the doctrine? He smirked after saying that analysis is too broad. Soldiers were carrying chests filled with precious objects, he continued, some make the land fertile, others bring drought. A necklace with a large, glittering gemstone hung from the chest, so we should punish the sinners and those who profit from it, while the righteous should be granted land. Kuzzle turned and left, saying, I'm doing this to save the people. His face darkened, and he coldly said, so if you want to defy my orders and save them. He turned back, a fiendish smile on his face, then try your best. He watched him leave in silence. Zebek's large back spoke volumes. Sunset descended on the quiet village, no one was outside. A man lay writhing near the well in the evening twilight. He stood before the rock, lost in thought, unable to speak. Zebek sighed, deep in thought, his eyebrows furrowed. Before him was Ifen's body, hanging from a tree, yet to be taken down. His hand, hidden behind his back, clenched involuntarily. Zebek approached Ifen and Safia. He couldn't bear it anymore. He looked at Safia lying on the ground, helpless. Even if messengers arrived now, it would be useless. Sunset fell. Zebek's shadow silently watched the couple. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke passed by. Zebek glanced around. A man, his back bristling with arrows, held a sword to Zebek's throat. He appeared from nowhere, coldly saying, make a move, and I'll kill you, stay still. Zebek was surprised. Before he could react, the sword was at his throat. In this desolate place, your skill is like that of a ghost, he said. Are you a messenger, really? He coldly replied, yes. Are you a knight? The two who rescued me were. Zebek of the King Zayden's church smirked. Oh, he asked with a cold smile, I'm just asking for precaution, but you're not a pact maker, are you? If a holy knight from the king's church requested a pact, it would be quite interesting. Zebek turned, his face angry, are you trying to humiliate me? He pondered, hesitating. He looked at Safia lying on the ground and said, that girl was my pact maker, she's dead, so I get a free gold coin. He watched his back turn and asked, can you tell me the current situation? He replied, if you sheath your sword and create some distance, I'll give you my word and tell you everything. Azadin turned, smiling faintly. Suddenly he stepped back. Along with lingering black smoke. Zebek was astonished, he's really a ghost. He calmly sheathed his sword, it seems you're confident you won't be easily attacked unless I ambush you. The setting sun illuminated his smile, if you're a holy knight from the king's church, you should at least have the guts. He stood at a distance, looking at Azadin. Are you a mage? He replied, except for me, everyone in the Herald clan is a mage. Zebek frowned slightly, so you're saying that wasn't magic? He stood at a distance, one hand on his hip. It was hard to distinguish his superhuman physical strength from magic. Zebek thought to himself, I don't understand what he's saying. Zebek continued to probe Azadin, what's your name, and what's your rank in your clan? He just smiled and remained silent. A little anxious, he said, I already told you my name, I'm RB from King Zayden's church. Azadin seemed surprised, oh, you did, my apologies. He put an arm around him and bowed slightly, I am Azadin, of the 108 souls, a messenger of the Emperor. Zebek thought, 108 souls is the lowest rank in the Herald clan, but his actions prove he's no ordinary person. Azadin said, then, as promised, under this sunset sky, tell me what happened. They stood on Karel, looking down at the distant houses and the parched land. Azadin put his hands up, so that's what happened. A voice suddenly rang out and feathers flew everywhere. the agreement had been signed. Zebek was surprised, so he looked up and he still looked very calm. An owl spread its wings, circling Karel. It slowed, then landed on Azadin's shoulder. The bird turned and said, "You fulfilled the request, but the requester is dead. Looks like you earned some free gold, Azadin of the 108 souls." Zebek's face was one of utter astonishment. A talking owl. It continued, "Now, move on to the next task, don't rest, move immediately, Azadin of the 108 souls." He turned to leave. "Wait," the other man said briefly. Zebek asked, "Azadin, just because the requester is dead, you'll take the reward and leave?" He calmly turned back. "You want this request completed? Strange, you know your master will suffer." Zebek drew his sword. "That won't happen, Soulless one, you have no soul." He pointed the sharp tip of his sword at Zayden. "Because I will defeat you." He smiled. "You'll let my blood stain a sword that's remained silent in the face of injustice, even for you, that's sad." Zebek was silent for a moment, his face slightly wrinkled. He angrily gritted his teeth. "Are you crazy, me, or are you crazy, because you've turned your back on injustice?" He became even angrier, his face showing his rage. "What do you know?" Azadin calmly asked, "Do you know the constellations in the nameless night sky, their names, and the legends associated with them?" Zebek also calmed down a bit. "Why do you want to say that now?" He crossed his arms and looked up at the sky. "People can see the same thing, but feel it differently. To some, it might seem like the main character of a legend, but to others, just a faint, pale light flickering in the darkness." Azadin slowly walked forward, "Just as the scene of their destruction might appear differently to you." He went to a person hanging in the air, from the perspective of the other spirits. Zebek lowers the gauge and it makes no difference. Zebek's eyes fell, "Because I can't do anything." His face showed his conflict. "As a knight of the king's church, I must respect those of the Saint King's bloodline." Azadin said, "Let me tell you something. I don't want to fight you, holy knight, if you feel pity for the girl." Azadin cut the rope, letting the body fall. He caught the stiff body and said, almost as a warning, "Your sword is not my enemy." Zebek silently looked at him, saying nothing. Azadin carried both bodies. Zebek watched him lay the bodies down and gradually guessed his intention. He exclaimed in disbelief, "You're going to bury them?" The spiritless person Azadin immediately corrected Zebek's words, "I will hold a ceremony for them." Thoughts warred within Zebek. Kuzzle wanted them hung from trees, becoming undead, screaming in agony, a display of power. Burying them was almost a defiance of Kuzzle. Azadin didn't force him, simply stating that if he didn't, then so be it. He focused on digging, his hands clawing into the brown earth, becoming dirty. Zebek was silent, his conflicting thoughts battling fiercely within him. Then his sword hand clenched. Zebek forcefully plunged his sword into the ground, to do something. Azadin was digging diligently when he heard a rustling sound beside him. Zebek spontaneously knelt down next to him and dug up the dirt together. They worked in silence, each focusing on their own space. As dusk fell, 2 graves were ready beside a tree, with a heartfelt prayer for courage and compassion. Azadin folded his hands and whispered before the grave, "Grant them peace." Zebek immediately wondered and asked him about that. A member of the Herald clan would use the Prayer of the Savior Association. The Soulless one shrugged casually, "I like their ideals." Zebek looked at his confident smile and said frankly, "You're reckless and shameless, abandoning your people's destiny to serve a heretical faith." Azadin wasn't angry, he just quietly said, "If I don't defend what I believe is right." That simple tree cast its shadow on the land. He stared at it and continued, "My birth would no longer have any meaning." Zebek still had many questions about the man before him, so he asked, "What do you like about the Salvation Society?" Suddenly, Azadin touched his belt and unbuckled it. Knight Zebek didn't understand what he was doing, stammering, What are you doing?" Azadin fashioned a bow in an instant. He turned forward and said, "That way, someone I respect is approaching." Zebek quickly turned, and something he didn't want happened. Kuzzle's army of soldiers arrived. The pampered young master rode closer on horseback. He sneered, using a condescending tone to taunt, "Oh, you like that peasant woman." The soldiers stood in neat rows behind him. Another one, with a cocky expression, said, "You should have told me then." The filthy words continued, Azadan's face darkening. To be fair, even though she was just a peasant from the countryside, she was truly beautiful. Zebek anxiously looked at the legion. He had been discovered caring for the girl. There were about 20 heavily armed soldiers. With a smug smile, Kuzzle was so confident that even a skilled warrior like Zebek felt anxious. He didn't stand a chance. Kuzzle glared at Zebek's companion, rudely asking, "By the way, Zebek, I've been wanting to settle a score with you." Looking over, he saw Azadan already had his bow drawn, while Kuzzle was still asking, "Who the hell is that?" Then he released the arrow. The arrow zipped past hundreds of soldiers, aiming straight for the eye of a soldier in the back ranks, leaving him stunned. The arrow pierced his eye socket, blood flowing freely. The knight's body trembled violently, a groan escaping his lips. All the soldiers stared in shock, while the wounded man clutched his head in panic. A cold sweat broke out on Zebek's brow. He thought, he actually hit a soldier at the back of the formation. Not stopping there, Azadan knocked another sharp arrow. The arrow tore through the air, flying several meters. This time, there was no surprise, but the threat remained. The knights immediately formed a defensive formation with their strong shields. Their hands gripped the iron handles tightly. But the soldier felt a sharp pain from below. The shield shattered, falling to the ground with a loud clang. The soldier couldn't speak, his mouth foaming, tears streaming down his face. The arrow had pierced the shield and embedded itself in his body, causing him to bleed profusely and fall to the ground. His body lay still, blood spreading across the hard stone. The remaining soldiers were even more panicked, staring at their fallen comrades. Zebek couldn't hide his amazement. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. The arrow had pierced the shield and bent like a living snake. Azadan suddenly answered Zebek's earlier question. "You asked what I like about the Salvation Society, right? I like the idea that a person's worth isn't defined by their lineage, but by their beliefs and actions." The arrows were always ready. A gentle breeze blew past Azadan as he spoke. He knocked another arrow, drawing the bowstring taut, like someone born with the blood of a saint king who rapes and slaughters his people. Kuzzle was so furious he trembled, unable to speak. "You soulless thing," Azadan said, raising his weapon without hesitation or fear. "To finish your sentence, you cannot be considered a noble Karel." A pampered young master like Kuzzle, with his Karel ego, was naturally enraged by the insult. He roared, "You damned!" Kuzzle glared at Azadan, unleashing a torrent of curses. He pointed at him, shouting orders to his knights, "Zebek, kill him." At the same moment, Azadan leaped. Kuzzle's furious voice boomed, "Kill that bastard." The soulless Azadan's Karel power manifested in the moonlight. He drew his bow, aiming at the army. The foolish knights looked up at the figure in the air. Azadan released the arrow. The knight was hit in the eye, screaming in pain. Immediately, Azadan knocked 2 more arrows, preparing for another volley. He constantly shifted position, causing the soldiers to fall, clutching their faces, with a single shot. After attacking from Azadan, he landed on the ground and encountered a low-level knight who defeated him. The spear in his hand stabbed forward while he screamed loudly and died. But unexpectedly, Azadan landed on the spear itself. He used the momentum and his Karel abilities to spring back up. Azadan leaped onto the Karel, somersaulting in a breathtaking display that stunned the soldiers. He used primarily lethal arrows. With Azadan's expert skill, arrows rained down with deadly accuracy. The knights couldn't touch him and fell one by one. Kuzzle narrowly avoided an arrow that grazed his ear, severing a lock of hair and terrifying him. The cowardly Kuzzle looked back to see the soldier in front of him struck down, spitting blood. Seeing the corpse, Kuzzle realized the wraith's intention wasn't to kill, but to permanently cripple them. Kuzzle gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. Zazadin's hunt continued. As more soldiers fell, Kuzzle panicked, enraged, and shouted, "Damn you, who are you? Hide behind him, the night sky covers you, making you blur. My name is Azadin." Black smoke wisped away on the wind as he calmly added, "I am a messenger." Kuzzle's face contorted in a grotesque expression of shock. Simultaneously, the soldiers paled, whispering, A messenger, he's a wraith." Kuzzle was suddenly yanked backward. Zazadin grabbed his arm, prompting a panicked exclamation from the inept Kuzzle. Before he could finish, he received a powerful punch. His body crashed to the ground with a heavy thud. Kuzzle groaned in pain as Zazadin retrieved his bow and arrow. He sheathed them, seemingly ending the fight with the soldiers. His focus shifted to the writhing, screaming Kuzzle. While Zazadin was distracted, a bold soldier approached. Gripping his sword, he yelled for courage, charging toward Zazadin's back. But Zazadin easily dodged the blow. Zazadin then punched the soldier, smashing his face. The soldier cried out in pain. Zazadin coolly picked up the sword from the pool of blood. To the remaining knights, he issued a challenge, "If you dare, come on." Suddenly, Zazadin remembered something he'd almost forgotten. The sword brutally plunged into the nearby corpse, spraying blood. The terrified soldiers watched. The increasingly bizarre and violent actions terrified them. Why was he so obsessed with castration? Zazadin turned to his left, and those in his gaze recoiled in horror. They could only utter desperate cries as screams erupted. "He's mad, he's insane," an owl perched on a branch, silently observing. After a brutal spree of violence, blood covered the ground. The defeated soldier's hands lay outstretched, immobile. Zazadin stepped over an arm, his slow footsteps echoed. Kuzzle's protectors were all slain. Zazadin's blade dripped with blood. He addressed the fleeing Kuzzle, "You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" Under the full moon, the wraith's words were an accusation, "You vile creature, you who brought suffering to the people." The pampered young master struggled to conjure a light in his palm. The magic blazed, engulfing the area. His entourage cried out, "Young master." Even the heavily armored soldiers were affected, their vision blurring. His eyes seemed about to burst, his sight failing. Kuzzle laughed triumphantly, "See, this is my magic." Zazadin, blindfolded, silently observed the foolish young master's boasting. Despite his bruised face, a testament to the superior Karel blood. Before he could finish, Zazadin coldly swung his sword, striking him. Kuzzle was stunned speechless, his blood erupted before it could fall. Kuzzle's eyes bulged with blood vessels, his face contorted as he looked down. The whole body of that useless young man remained the same, only his head slowly looked at the wound. Then he hugged his pants and screamed miserably. Tears and other bodily fluids flowed as he angrily shouted, "What have you done to me?" Azadin smiled and replied, "You're intellectually deficient as well, you still don't understand after I did that." He then continued to grab Kuzzle's hair, making him fearfully exclaim, Wait, what do you want?" The man now began to plead and negotiate with Azadin, "Money, women, anything, I'll give you anything, I am the heir of the sacred Yaega's holy family. But a soulless being like you doesn't need that." He leaned down and whispered, "Unfortunately for you, I am a spirit slayer, a messenger." Kuzzle's eyes didn't dare blink once, his face was drained of blood. Zebek, behind him, covered his head and turned away. The useless Kuzzle only now noticed him and hastily cried out, Sir. Even in this shameful and defeated state, he yelled, "Sir Zebek, what are you doing? Help me." Zebek replied with displeasure, "I couldn't see." Kuzzle didn't realize it was because of that dazzling technique earlier. Kuzzle's true face appeared, he cursed wildly, "Damn you, I'm a noble, I carry sacred blood, all because of what I did to those commoners." Azadin raised his knife, he muttered to the loud mouth before him, thinking back. He still held on to his hair. Kuzzle looked at him questioningly, "You think, you'll let me live?" The sharp point of the knife appeared in the dandy's eye, along with Azadin's smile. "That's right, live positively, I think you'll especially need it. With a swipe, a merciless stab into his remaining eye. Blood spurted out, more than before, staining the ground red, accompanied by a blood-curdling scream. Kuzzle could no longer see, only able to scream with his mouth wide open. Having finished, Azadin threw him onto the floor, saying, I don't have false contracts, but I think I've been very lenient. Now, the area was filled with corpses and blood. Azadin stood amidst the carnage and said, the Emperor's law has been upheld. Now it was Xebek's turn. After watching for a long time, he drew his sword. The two faced each other, Xebek as a knight, warning Azadin, I am a knight of the king's church, I cannot let you go, you mentioned the Emperor's law. He lowered himself into a battle stance, ready to fight regardless of the righteousness of Azadin's actions. Azadin threw his knife to the ground and sighed wearily. He pointed at Xebek and said with a smile, You're not like the other knights of the king's church. Xebek misunderstood, thinking he was being insulted, and angrily exclaimed, How dare you insult me? Azadin shrugged, explaining, No, it's praise. In his eyes, those knights were just scarecrows. The other knights of the king's church were no different from troublemakers forced out of their homes due to inheritance issues. Xebek hesitated, wanting to address that, but the soulless Azadin interrupted him. Anyway, the body of a soul like mine becomes translucent and carried away by the wind. Can you follow me? Xebek's eyes widened in surprise. What? Azadin said nothing more and vanished. He left a friendly farewell for the night. If fate allows, we shall meet again, Sir Xebek. All that remained after his departure was a wisp of mysterious black smoke and gently swirling winds. Xebek looked up at the starlit sky. It was dawn. The soldiers slowly got up. No one could kill Azadin of the Messenger Guild. Instead, we suffered permanent losses, those troublemakers forced out of their homes due to inheritance issues. Xebek's mind was filled with thoughts. He wasn't wrong, that's true of me too. Then he smiled unexpectedly and accepted everything. Oh, the dawn, what a beautiful sight, it makes one feel at peace, Xebek whispered to himself, my chest feels so light now. Inside Kago's luxurious and splendid room, the villagers knelt and pleaded, My lord, please exempt our taxes this year. The representative man described their hardships, We beg you, my lord, the people are fleeing, becoming nomads, starving and wandering like ghosts, we are being overwhelmed by monsters and thieves, and I apologize, but we cannot pay taxes anymore. Even Earl Carell looked at them with disdain, how shameless. Those old eyes looked at them and said, with this situation, you'll certainly demand more. The poor villagers felt the pressure of his gaze, their hearts pounded with fear. The man bowed low and pleaded, Please have mercy on us, we are at the end of our resources. Carell opened his mouth to reply, Nothing can change the lowly blood flowing in your veins. If you want, I will provide aid. 3 people at the front, surprised, asked doubtfully, My lord, you will really? The earl smirked mysteriously. He repeated his words, Yes, however. With the condition that if you fail to meet my demands. A blatant proposal came from the earl's mouth. The outcome was clear, all of you will be hanged. The room fell into a terrifying silence. The people looked at each other, whispered and gave many conflicting opinions but did not dare to speak. He also knows that his hand burns with a red flame. Don't be afraid, what you ask for is no more than a page. He produced a rather thick book. It's quite common for this spell book. The book was held above the villagers' heads. They stared, saying to him, A spell book, we are ignorant of magic and know nothing about it. Carell chuckled and replied, Even fools like you can find it. What he sought wasn't clear, only his assertion, simply wish for it, and it will respond and reveal itself. The Marquis tilted his head, If you can find and bring me such a spell book. The reward he revealed left the villagers gaping in astonishment. I will exempt your village from taxes for 3 years and provide 50 bushels of wheat, barley, and oats. Their faith soared. A villager eagerly asked, My lord, at least we should know the spellbook's name to find it, shouldn't we? Carell withdrew the magic from his hand, his face impassive as he looked at the villagers. He revealed it to be a copy of the Saint King's book. Upon hearing this, all hope vanished. After that, no one dared to disturb him. Carell sat alone in his chair. A snake slithered out from behind the curtain, its body encased in glistening skin. The snake flicked its tongue, hissing like a common venomous snake. Carell glanced at it, neither fearful nor interested. A beautiful girl appeared and said to him, "I believe mentioning the Saint King's book is a bit reckless, my lord Marquis." Carell looked at her and spat out a curt, dismissive reply. He truly desired the book himself. "Haven't you all scoured everywhere for that spell book? The rumor will spread across the continent anyway, it's wiser to find even a single page." The Marquis clasped his hands. "What is it, sorceress?" The sorceress reported news from Kazel. "I must inform you that your son has become a victim." While she spoke, he interrupted, unconcerned, "Lord Kuzel's forces aren't easily defeated, Lord Zebek was with him." The sorceress then mentioned a crucial detail: the opponent is the Messenger Guild. This finally caught Carell's attention. He raised an eyebrow. The sorceress affirmed, "I'm sure they're also seeking the Saint King's book. If they wish freedom from their obligations, they'll certainly need it." Despite his son's injuries, he coldly asked, "Is Kuzel dead?" The sorceress replied, "I heard he lost both eyes and suffered severe damage to his reproductive organs." Marquis Carell looked away and clicked his tongue. The sorceress asked, "What will you do?" He extended his hand, "Send soldiers there and annihilate the Messenger Guild." The woman's hand was grasped by Carell. Calmly, she obeyed. "Understood, I'll contact the commander." But he pulled her hand back. "No, order someone else." Placing the alluring woman upon him, Carell gently caressed her. "If my son is castrated, I can always have another." The woman, lightly touched, met his gaze with seductive eyes. Outside, the scorching sun beat down, the dry branches resembling a desert. The water in his flask was gone. He tried to pour, but nothing remained. He sighed in frustration on his way to his mission. "Damn it, I'll die of thirst." As he walked, he cursed the owl. "Why did you play tricks and say only 2 days, you stupid spirit? Dare you speak so recklessly with the Emperor's voice?" The arrogant owl didn't answer. Azadin grunted in annoyance. He continued ranting about the Emperor. "The Emperor's sudden death left us, his messengers, despised worldwide. We're called spirit-slaying stars and soulless heretics. His spirit struggled to keep up. Because of your show with those contract breakers, I had to leave my luggage and rush here. I'm dying of thirst, only have dry rations, and can't even digest them, so I'll die of hunger too." Having no other choice, it spoke to stop him. "Wait, I'm sorry, soon, your servant will." Before it could reassure Azadin, both looked ahead and noticed something. Azadin, sensitive as a soulless being, gripped his sword. Ghosts. Before him, a strong green flame erupted. Figures appeared. Azadin recognized them, those hanged from the trees. Seeing him, they bowed politely. Azadin nodded and said, "Ah, hello." He addressed the spirits. "This land lacks the king's virtuous light and the archangel's blessings. Staying here is bad. I've avenged you all, so please move on to the afterlife." Safia suddenly pointed behind him, making Azadin look in her direction. Suddenly there was a well in the middle of this dry area. Azadin immediately went there. "You mean you want to give me water? There's no need for that, just rest," he said, eagerly peering into the well as sunlight shone on his back. Azadin pulled the rope to draw up water to quench his thirst. His spirit soared after seeing the well. He wanted to drink immediately. But when the bucket reached the top, he was surprised by what he saw inside. A piece of paper with mysterious characters was placed within the sand. Azadin curiously exclaimed, "What's this?" The messenger ship, belonging to a race called Aragasa, drifted on the open sea. The ship capsized, and the survivors landed on the island after weathering a great storm from another continent, reaching the Wybris continent. 8 holy kings of the Yagas clan ruled the Wybris continent, initially holding 8 kingdoms. In the magnificent palace stood a powerful man. Below the steps lay many crowns. However, during that era, one king monopolized all 8 kingdoms, subjugating the other 7 holy kings who were brothers. His expression was serious. Emperor Yislat wanted to eliminate all remnants of the fallen holy kings. He took advantage of this opportunity. Meanwhile, the Aragasa, foreigners seeking land to settle, were given a book of imperial magic, the Huangdiao Xie, and a scripture called the Emperor's Voice. In return, the foreigners signed a pact with the emperor and became his messengers. The mystery behind it all. The Aragasa ruthlessly stained their hands with the blood of the world's gods, as if in a purge, they became the emperor's swords, arms, and executioners. And personally executed noble families who defied the emperor's laws and lived in extravagance. That was the most heinous crime the people of White Bryce could commit, for they believed in the afterlife and eternal reincarnation. But it didn't end there. The emperor died, and the empire was once again divided into 8 kingdoms. The Aragasa were despised by the Wybris people, the messenger force disbanded and were called the Soulless messengers. The events unfolded before their eyes, but they faced an unexpected problem. Painfully, the pact with the emperor remained in effect. Even after the emperor's death, the messengers were still bound to serve as his messengers forever. Azadin held the paper, examining it closely. This is a page from a book. From the Book of the Holy Kings. Is this the source of the emperor's power? The phantoms of the deceased kindly waved goodbye. Thank you, please rest, they said. Azadin stood still, lost in thought. He hypothesized, if I collect this, can I truly escape this cursed obligation? Calling it a curse is a bit harsh, it's an honorable responsibility according to the pact. He rolled up the paper. So this fell into my hands. Fate is certainly no joke. You don't seem very happy. Isn't this what all messengers yearn for? The tasks are, 1. Fulfill the pact's obligations and collect 100,000 gold coins. 2. Obtain the Book of the Holy Kings. If completed, you can escape the obligation. He thought, well, this is indeed the messenger's goal. Azadin's feet kept moving, but he worried, I fear this has already spread throughout the world. He recalled the truth. From the very beginning, the reason the Book of the Holy Kings was torn apart was because of my father. The long, hot, and humid journey exhausted him. I'm so thirsty. Suddenly, a girl shouted at him from afar. Mid-I-am exuded killing intent. It's him. She relentlessly mocked him, scorning the son of the guild's worst traitor. He's incompetent, powerless, and stupid. Mid-I-am curiously asked, he really can't use magic, as rumored, they say he's cursed. Anxiously, he replied, I don't know if he's cursed, but I'm sure he can't use magic. Mid-I-am scoffed, I heard he was still bedwetting at 8 years old, he can't even string a bow. A gloomy atmosphere emanated from her. I doubt he'll ever complete a messenger's task. Ishmael awkwardly advised, Mid-I-am, let's go back. You don't need to work for the lowest-ranked messenger when you're related to a pact maker. She proudly agreed. Want to challenge him to test his skills? He flatly refused. No helpers, you can't attack a messenger. Midiam's eyes lit up with hope. Who cares? If I win, his position will be mine. I won't lose. If he dies, it's just a matter of removing the arrowhead. Ishmael could only advise, he's a student of the troublesome elder Cassus. There's always a condition in every situation. She remained adamant, it doesn't matter how amazing Azadin is, a fool is still a fool, even after 100 years of training. She frowned. Who would have thought the son of a traitor, a guy who can't even use magic, would be a messenger? Mid-I-am raised her bow to aim at the position opposite him. He's just an existence that takes up space, so people with abilities like me can't become messengers. The arrow flew at super-fast speed. It sped closer and closer to Azadin's back. She hid in a corner. Mid-I-am observed everything outside. After a while, she peeked out. Suddenly, a small stone hit her forehead. Ishmael panicked. Mid-I-am fell flat on the ground. Azadin asked without hesitation, were you the one who shot this arrow? She rubbed her forehead where she was stuck and said hello, wondering when he had come that she hadn't felt his presence at all. She looked at a quiver of arrows. Wait, don't tell me he caught my arrow mid-air, with his quiver. He asked, what are your names? She replied, but her face was indifferent. I am from the ether, and he voiced me. I am Ishmael, we are assistants come to assist you. Azadin's face darkened. Support me. He threw the quiver in his hand. This. I am forced a smile. Your quiver seems empty, so I just wanted to give you my arrow. Isn't that the best support? He sighed and turned away. It seems you registered as my assistants because you're bored in this sanctuary. He said, go home, you brats. She was furious. Brat. She tried to prove herself. I told you, I'm of ether bloodline. Azadin calmly replied, that's a weak point, and if you came to serve me, you are now my subordinate, yet you even shot an arrow at me. His expression turned fierce. Or do you want me to teach you what happens when you act like this? She looked bewildered, outside the sanctuary. Immediately, her impression of Azadin changed. He's so different from the rumors, he's actually someone who's been teased and bullied. Why? Azadin stood in front of her and warned her to apologize for her disrespectful actions. I am, and if you want something from me, then respect me no matter which side you are, as an Aragasa clansman or my enemy. I am gritted her teeth. She bowed her head. I am, of ether, apologize for my insolence towards Messenger Azadin. I am an Aragasa. He calmly replied, I accept your apology. He carefully warned, however, from now on, don't shoot anyone with your arrow again. If you don't intend to kill, weapons aren't toys outside the sanctuary. She obediently complied, yes. Then he turned to leave. I won't say anything else, so go back to the sanctuary. I don't need assistance. Suddenly, he had a strange idea. Azadin cheerfully asked, do you guys have water? At the same time, a voice rang out, I challenge you. Ishmael frantically tried to persuade I am. He widened his eyes, anxious. No, that person is very dangerous. I am clenched her fist, knowing, that's right, he's different from the rumors. Don't be foolish, he's powerful, intelligent, and arrogant, but will I become a cowardly fool if I don't dare challenge him just because he's strong? She once again spoke loudly and clearly. Messenger Azadin, I am of the ether, officially declare war on you as your messenger Azadin. Standing imposingly before I am, he paused slightly upon hearing her words. Messenger Azadin, I am of ether, challenge you for the position of messenger. Ishmael cried and wanted to stop her, but she didn't have time to do so. Azadin was slightly flustered, raising a hand to his head. What an arrail fight, it's a bad influence on the kids. He looked at I am, hand on his hip, speaking seriously, you'll take my place if you win, but you know what happens if I win, right? She responded fearlessly, of course, everything I have, including my life, will be yours. I'm ready. Azadin pondered, although arrail is a problem, the bigger problem is that she underestimates me. He looked at the determined I am, advising her, you should give up before it's too late. Only arrail can defeat a messenger. I know my reputation isn't good, but I didn't get this position for nothing. She turned around at his words. I am started to walk away. Ishmael nervously called out, I am. I am walked a distance, then stopped. Her voice rang out, now we are 100 paces apart. I challenge you. Suddenly, a regal voice commanded, startling Azadin and Ishmael, the duel is confirmed. Messenger Azadin, accept the challenge. I am was flustered. The Emperor's voice. Azadin lightly scratched his cheek, seriously. Ishmael's pale face bowed down. He trembled at the sky. He thought the Emperor's voice was the spirit assigned to each false country. Ishmael thought that now that he had the Emperor's voice as a witness, it was impossible to refuse the challenge. He looked anxiously at the two preparing for battle before him, inwardly worried. This isn't good, I am. She yelled, I just need to win. Sunlight shone everywhere. Azadin took the water skin from Ishmael. Ishmael and I am watched as he calmly lifted the water skin to his lips and drank deeply. He pondered. Ishmael gritted his teeth, pondering, what's going on here? An archery skill suited for the battlefield, sacrificing accuracy for speed. He suddenly raised his arm high. The image of Azadin fighting, his hand slamming into the earth, causing the ground to tremble, flooded Ishmael's mind. That was undoubtedly a peak-level Aragasa technique. Mid-Iam panicked. Waves of arrows flew towards her. Mid-Iam struggled to defend herself. Azadin knocked an arrow. He fired arrows, each aimed precisely at her. They flew as if guided. Arrows rained down on Mid-Iam. She tried to dodge and use magic. An arrow pierced Midiam's face, causing her to stare in shock. From Azadin and Midiam's earlier fight, Ishmael was captivated. Watching him drink water now, he thought the other couldn't use magic, but he had just used the beauty of the natural yellow crane. How? He glanced at him, then thought, not to mention. Mid-Iam held her sword in an attacking stance. She frowned, looking ahead. Mid-Iam dodged Azadin's attack and charged towards him. A loud sound erupted near the rock. Azadin watched her approach. She saw him and thought, good, my prediction was correct. Midiam's eyes sharpened. Got you, Azadin. She slashed at Azadin with her sword. He didn't react. She cut him in two. It seemed the battle was over, victory hers, but then she was surprised. Azadin had vanished. He was behind Mid-Iam. Ishmael yelled, Mid-Iam, behind you. Mid-Iam instantly turned, using magic to block his attack. Azadin's hand met hers. He grasped Midiam's hand. He clenched his fist, raised his hand, and said in a low voice, Karel, it's over. Mid-Iam was completely overpowered. She panicked. The blow sent her flying into a rock, shattering it. Ishmael cried out, Azadin. He was indignant, a blood relative of the Karel, betraying their own child, the most precious of the Karel bloodline. He ran furiously towards Azadin, yelling, unforgivable, you wretched villain, how dare you, A powerful voice boomed, stopping him. The fight was over. A symbol, a patterned carving of an animal, appeared. The voice continued, Mid-Iam of the Aetherer, you challenged Azadin for the envoy position and failed. Your fate now lies in the hands of Azadin and Samel. For your interference, you shall become the envoy's property, along with Mid-Iam. Midiam's eyes filled with tears, her whole body trembled. She drew a knife from her side. She decisively held the sharp blade to her throat. Ishmael was horrified. Azadin threw a stone, hitting Midiam's hand, knocking the knife away. The knife fell to the ground. Sitting on a rock, he said, I knew you'd try something like that. Mid-Iam collapsed to the ground. Ishmael cried out, Mid-Iam. Ishmael sat down. Azadin put his hand around Midiam's shoulder to comfort her a bit and spoke in a deep voice. The young girl had already lost the fight, so she didn't even have the right to die. She could only die when I died or when I wanted her to. He looked straight at Mid-Iam, who was trembling more and more. Azadin asked in a cold voice, are you really challenging me without even knowing it? A slight smirk played on his lips. Such a child. Azadin tossed a water flask to Ishmael. He stood up, then calmly stated, that lesson should suffice. I'll grant both of you your freedom. Azadin's words left them both incredulous. Ishmael questioned, what, while Mid-Iam asked, what do you mean? Gesturing with his hand, Azadin said, let's pretend that duel never happened. It would be disadvantageous for both of you if it were recorded. His words left them speechless. In the arid desert, the land dry and barren, Azadin walked, step by step. Walking ahead, he called back to the two behind him, I've said it, I don't need slaves, I've freed you both, return to the Holy Land. Mid-Iam confidently placed her hand on her chest, proudly retorting, why did you get a beautiful and talented young woman as a slave, only to let her go like that? Ishmael threw his hands up in exasperation, hitting his forehead, Mid-Iam, please. Without looking at them, Azadin said, as for her beauty, I don't know, but if she were as talented as Arail, she wouldn't have lost. Turning his head, he glanced at them. There are many in the world who like young women, and many cultures have traditions of early marriage. Next time, think carefully before proposing a duel. Mid-Iam bowed her head, and then Ishmael froze. Azadin spoke up deeply, pondering and never challenging anyone again. If there was anyone she absolutely had to kill, assassinate them. Ishmael managed a weak smile. He thought Azadin had spoken more than he expected, but it seemed his words came from genuine concern. Mid-Iam spoke, this. A look of amusement crossed her face, her eyes shining brightly. It was new and refreshing. Ishmael's face darkened. He shouted, what? A figure slumped in a chair, the Imperial Covenant, serving the Emperor and the Aragasa clan, exchanging what they needed, and any traitor would face a horrific death. Fierce battles erupted. This covenant, once a symbol of loyalty and a mark of honor, became a terrifying curse after the Emperor's death. Even after his death, the covenant's effects remained, binding the Aragasa clan. Swords clashed, a never-ending cycle of servitude, finally showing signs of breaking when the Messengers Guild intervened in the Aragasa Kingdom's succession war. The victor would receive the Holy King's Book. The Aragasa clan won the succession war and obtained a copy of the Holy King's Book. However, a notorious traitor stole the book and fled. A strong man, his name was Ark. The book thief was caught before everyone's eyes, the wicked traitor. A deep voice boomed, return what you stole, or you will die. He threatened, hand over the copy of the Holy King's Book before you suffer unimaginable pain. Ark sneered at those words. The clan had threatened him in every way, but in the end, their hopes were shattered and vanished. Pieces of paper fell as Ark tore the book apart in the heart of the world's mountain range, and thus, he became the first to die by the Covenant's curse. Because of the curse, he gave birth to twins in a man's body. 2 children, Azadin and Arail, twin brothers. Ironically, of the two, Arail became the most powerful messenger in the clan's history, while Azadin was rumored to be a fool. Azadin put his hands behind his head, his eyes forward. Mid-Iam and Ishmael stared at him. She suddenly thought, who would spread such nonsense? A fool, he's anything but. He took a step forward. I've made myself clear. He glanced at them, then turned to leave, saying, I have no intention of taking you both, so don't follow me. Mid-Iam retorted, we're not following you. She presented a letter. It was from the regional leader of Salasma. Azadin took the letter. That old man doesn't like me. He opened the letter seriously, reading every word. All right, let's skip the scolding about the missing report. Copies of the Holy King's Book have recently surfaced. Collect them, it will be reflected in your performance evaluation. Judging by what's written here, other messengers must know about the copies. After reading, he put the letter away, looked at them, and asked, this says copies of the Holy King's Book have recently appeared. Do you know anything about it? Mid-Iam brightly replied, yes, we do. Your father betrayed the guild. Ishmael kicked her hard on the leg. Mid-Iam looked at him, crying out in pain. Ow, why did you do that? Azadin interrupted, enough, it seems you both know about it. He mused, I'll go to Salasma to meet the regional leader. Mid-Iam pinched Ishmael's cheeks hard, making him cry. Azadin said, thank you for delivering the letter. She looked at him with pleading, sparkling eyes. You know, we're going to the same place. Can we follow you? I can also tell you about things within the guild. Azadin sighed helplessly. This path isn't mine. If you want, go ahead and follow. Receiving his approval, she screamed so beautifully. After walking for a while, the three of them found a place to sit and think. Azadin lay under the tree, slightly stirring. He sat up, stretching to relieve some of his fatigue. He called Ishmael and Mid-Iam to wake up and get going. Clouds drifted lazily across the sky. The three started walking forward, with Mid-Iam and Ishmael sleepily trailing behind. Suddenly, they heard Azadin say, hey, there's a stream over there. Ahead was a clear, fresh stream. The three approached the stream to fill their water containers. Suddenly, someone shouted, hey, you guys. A group of unfriendly people aggressively demanded, who gave you permission to take water from our stream? Mid-Iam was about to draw her sword, but Azadin stopped her. He held out his hand, saying to the group, I don't intend to cause trouble. What do you want in exchange? He placed his sword on his shoulder and arrogantly declared, naturally, all of you. Azadin asked again, let me be sure, is there really no way to compromise? He haughtily replied, are you being verbose, man? Another man added insultingly, what's with that mask, are you a clown? He placed his sword on his shoulder, decisively ordering, "Capture the girl alive, and kill the men." His subordinates immediately agreed. But moments later, they fell to the ground, sprawled out. The three leaders knelt down, begging, "Please, spare us." Azadin sighed. They spoke again. "We're just innocent civilians," Ishmael suspiciously asked. "You're not bandits?" They spoke earnestly, their eyes filled with tears. One said, "We were recently forced into military service. The children of Marquis Carrel have been forcibly conscripting people everywhere, forcing them to find a copy of a book." The person next to him continued, "How could we find something we don't even know what it is, so we've been wandering aimlessly, and luckily, fortunately, we met noble Carrel people like yourselves." Mid-Iam crossed her arms, still suspicious. What if they're bandits using this as an excuse? He pondered. This is difficult. This isn't a path that merchants or travelers usually take. Her eyes narrowed, and she slowly drew her sword. "We should kill them to keep them quiet," she said. He stopped her. "Wait." Azadin calmly said, "Mid-Iam, I don't kill without reason." Mid-Iam was confused. "Oh." Ishmael looked at him questioningly. "Isn't it right to kill them, even if they're really innocent civilians? If we let them live, we risk being exposed," he said. He calmly explained, "But that doesn't mean I should kill them for my own convenience. Everyone deserves a second chance." The blonde-haired man who was kneeling at the front hurriedly said, Yes, that's right. Human life is truly important. A noble Carrel is truly different. You are so magnanimous." The man next to him nervously chuckled and added, "You are the best, sir. I'm sure you and your family will receive great fortune thanks to your compassion." Azadin, like a sovereign, commanded, "Silence." Ishmael pondered. He often saw people refusing to kill, but he was surprised to find such a person in the messenger guild. Azadin rushed forward and punched one of them in the face, causing Ishmael to gape in shock. The man fell to the ground, causing the others to cower. He coldly said, "Good, that punch was perfect for destroying his eye." Glancing at the two remaining terrified men, Azadin threatened, "Make sure you don't make any sudden movements. One mistake, and your face will be shattered." The blonde-haired man stammered, "But, as you promised, you'll spare us." He smiled a terrifying smile, his hands clenched into fists. "I will spare you," he said. Azadin, like a demon, frightened them. He continued, "But only after I've inflicted permanent injuries, ensuring you can't harm others even if you don't immediately repent." Midiam's face darkened. "I guess that's fine," she said. Ishmael awkwardly added, "They shrieked, echoing through the forest. All of them were badly injured. One clutched his groin, groaning, "I can't have children anymore." Another grimaced, "My testicles." The leader still spouted curses, "That damn." He spat out a hateful threat, "If I ever see him again, I'll." A giant hand descended upon his head. That hand crushed his skull, causing the others to recoil in shock and disbelief. The brown-haired man slowly turned to look. The moment he turned, he was seized by the monster. He screamed in terror. The monster looked at the man in its grasp with lustful eyes, saying, "Food." It tossed the man into a sack behind it. "Your convenient food," it said. Another man was caught. "You're mine, Goldu," it roared. Screams echoed through the forest. Looking at the smaller monsters behind it greedily eating, it laughed loudly, a terrifying sound. It looked towards a village in the distance. That monster became excited and the people of the strong fortress village were everywhere. Azadin rode on a camel and walked with his two companions under the bright sunshine. While traveling, Mid-Iam suddenly spoke. "At first, I thought he would be lenient, so I was very surprised." Both she and Isama looked at him happily, "But I didn't think it was a bad tactic. We even collected all the weapons." Azadin turned away. He stroked the camel's head and replied, "It's difficult for one person to understand another without experiencing the same situation. Those people will surely remember today's horrifying memory. Losing an eye will have a more serious consequence than she thinks. Those who were harmed will now become a source of fear for them." He didn't entirely intend to cut off their lives, but believed, and I believe, it was a good opportunity for them to repent for their past actions. Ishmael raised an eyebrow, letting out a sound of disbelief, an opportunity for repentance. Azadin's intention was clear, his compassion was like the Karel sky above them, he had forgiven them and even given them a chance to cleanse their souls. Azadin suddenly stopped and dismounted. He suddenly mentioned something else, however, that conversation made me uncomfortable. Mid-I wondered what the conversation was about. He explained, they said Marquis Khazad-dîn is looking for a copy of the Saint King's book. Ishmael hummed in agreement and then asked, but Marquis Khazad-dîn lost the succession war, do you think he's trying to climb to Karel by using the book to increase his magical power? He put his hand on his face and cautiously said, a political figure determined to seize power, that's dangerous, I have to take off this mask because it shows I'm a messenger. Azadin took off his mask, we'll have to be careful until we leave the Marquis's territory. The young man and woman gasped in shock when they saw the face he had hidden. What? They exclaimed in unison upon witnessing his strange face, he had no eyes. They stood dumbfounded, only Azadin moved to rummage through something. He found an old garment and wrapped it around himself, revealing a large scar over his eye. Ishmael became increasingly surprised, he stammered, but you don't seem to have any trouble despite not being able to see, how is that possible? Azadin calmly replied, I don't know either, I've been able to see since birth, even without eyes. Mid-I boldly approached him, she opened her eyes wide and looked closely, making him puzzled. Her surprised expression continued, Azadin had to ask, what, if you have something to say, say it. But he didn't expect her words to be about his appearance, if I thought you were injured, you'd look more handsome, he frowned, displeased, what? Mid-I continued to express her thoughts, it's like you were very handsome, then unfortunately had an accident and lost your eyes, I think having a scar like that is better than having a beautiful face but ugly eyes. Isama, from behind, reminded Mid-I, you're being very impolite. Azadin turned away and petted his mount, she spoke exactly like the person who left this scar on my face. Mid-I curiously wanted to know who it was. The name of the perpetrator echoed in his mind, he was still young then, and a lot of blood flowed from his eyes, Arail. But Arail still glared at him, her blade still unlowered, she said, it would be strange if I didn't have what should be there, and that at least she could imagine that there had once been an eye where the scar was. She slashed his face and said, it's better this way. Azadin didn't seem resentful or sad recounting the story, but rather calmly enjoyed it. Well, thanks to that, I can pretend to be blind, when I'm alone, it's no problem, but Mid-I quickly interjected, oh, so we can just pretend you're blind, right? Azadin produced a cane and used it as if truly blind, he replied, it's fine. Only a few buildings. The group lined up outside to undergo inspection by the gate guards. Ishmael carried his luggage and looked anxiously at the line, I can see the gate, but the line is quite long, Azadin reminisced, it's been a long time since I've been in front of the East Village gate. Mid-I was amused, it's also the village where the Emperor's Road begins, don't you think it's a good starting point for our journey? However, he coldly dismissed her thoughts, quiet, I'm a pilgrim traveling alone, and you two are children who happen to join me. Then he flinched slightly, looking in a certain direction. Ishmael was called by him, but with a strange nickname, Puppy Eyes. He looked precisely at the guards who were openly extorting, wasn't it like this the last time I came here? When they found gold and silver, they didn't hide the greed on their faces and took it. The man, stripped down to his trousers, helplessly watched his luggage being ransacked. Mid-I frowned, they're clearly robbing. Ishmael also said fearfully, it wasn't this bad the last time we came here. Azadin got his answer, he thought to himself, they're looking for something, if they're searching this thoroughly. Suddenly, a middle-aged man approached and started talking to them, you didn't see that, did you? Azadin replied, oh, no, these are two orphan children traveling with me. He showed pity for him, oh my, it must be very difficult. Azadin maintained his calm demeanor and asked, not at all, what's the matter? The man then told him, haven't you heard about the copies of the Saint King's book? It's rumored that a member of the Messenger Guild made copies of the Saint King's book after stealing it, and those copies are appearing all over the world. And naturally, it caught the eyes of the greediest individuals, the Marquis's illegitimate children are currently hunting for it, but things are quite chaotic. Azadin whispered, so it's not just one piece of trash like that. The man looked at him blankly, so Azadin dismissed it, saying, nothing. The piece of paper Azadin possessed was threatened. He thought seriously, this is bad, this is going to be troublesome. The man grabbed the soldier's hand and pleaded, I need that money to support my family. You're only looking for the Saint King's book, so why are you taking my money? He immediately threw his hand away and accidentally punched him in the mouth, then screamed in annoyance and let go. The man fell heavily to the ground, while the greedy soldiers just watched. They even concocted a blatant excuse, magic books come in countless forms, how do we know this isn't a counterfeit? We'll examine it carefully and return it if it's not the king's book. The groaning man sat up, his daughter intervened, scolding them, this is robbery, it's wrong, give it back. The soldiers' cruel voices startled the little girl, brat. They showed no mercy, even threatening her, you don't know what a whipping post is, do you? The man immediately hugged his daughter protectively, stop, you're threatening a child, this is violence. They went even further, punching the man in the stomach, shut up. He trembled on the ground, his terrified daughter sat beside him, the soldier continued to yell, damn it, teach your daughter some manners, understand. He ordered the next group forward. Mid-Iam was furious but clenched her fists, restraining herself, those lunatics. Ishmael wasn't much calmer, he and she both asked, what should we do, should we fight? Azadin raised his hand to stop them, wait. Another man approached the soldiers with a hurried, fearful expression. He whispered in the other's ear, causing the soldier to exclaim in surprise, what? Even the spiritless one's ability surprised him upon learning the situation. The townspeople quickly dispersed, everyone grabbed their belongings and ran. Some pointed out hiding places, everyone scurried away. The remaining immigrants looked at each other in confusion, what's going on, why are they packing up, is there an org nearby? Azadin spoke, causing panic, what is it? He added an explanation, I overheard them, my hearing is good. A loud sound echoed, Midiam's face darkened, they closed the gate. Somewhere in the forest, the shadows of leaves fell on the golden earth of the afternoon sun. A small base was set up in the middle of a path, people brought their belongings here. Tarkiev, the illegitimate son of Marquis Karel, smirked and asked his attendants, are you sure the gate is locked? They quickly replied, yes, my lord, we've secured it. He dismounted and gave further orders, we've confirmed there's no copy of the king's book here, gather what we've collected and let's go. Suddenly, a panicked voice called his name, making him turn, Sir Tarkiev. A soldier quickly poked his head out, what should we do? Tarkiev responded indifferently, hold off any orgs or monsters, you've received adequate training. But the reality was harsher than he thought, you only had 1 day of training, the soldier suggested, at least let the others in, I'll command the defense here. Tarkiev sat back in his chair and sighed, you're not even a knight, what can you do? His inner voice raged, I don't want to hear that from a fleeing knight. The illegitimate son chuckled and decided, fine, I'll leave it to him, let's go. His carriage sped away, leaving the soldier alone. He felt an unusual wind and sensed movement approaching the ground. Birds in the sky frantically fled something that was shaking the earth. The soldier's terrified voice echoed, he huddled, where are we going? We'll be eaten by monsters, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. He peered through a crack in his hiding place. Then his eyes widened in terror. Outside, chaos reigned with roaring sounds. Huge green monsters surged forward, wielding massive clubs. They roared a single sound, a white, hulking monster led the pack, grinning, meat, meat, meat. Outside the forest, a huge column of black smoke rose from a raging fire, a figure stood high above, Karel, and saw it. A hot wind blew across his shocked face, the immigrants. They screamed in panic, it's here. The immigrants couldn't enter the city, so they turned back together. A woman returned, holding a lantern, a worried look on her face. She went towards Azadin and the 2 children, the path from here is very dangerous. Gently handing Ishmael a lantern, despite her sadness, she encouraged them, please be careful, guide your sister and your uncle, this is a spare lantern, take it, Ishmael. Smiling, he replied, thank you, ma'am, I'll take good care of them, don't worry. Behind them, Mid-I-Am laughed at Azadin, making him question it. In Azadin's heart, he realized a great difference, it seems people will be much friendlier if I pretend to be blind. Several hours earlier, someone had come to inform those left behind, the knights and mercenaries have fled. The other warrior tried to stabilize his voice to reassure and call the group, but we still had to remind everyone to protect our village, asking those who could fight to stay and fight. The people there started to whisper and the other warrior kept trying to convince them that just support would be fine, that way while we protect the village the old and weak people will be able to run a little further. The man who was beaten earlier heroically told his daughter Tsa, your father will fight too, I will protect you. Tsa retorted loudly, what, you can't even peel an apple properly. Lost in his thoughts, he suddenly hummed. Mid-I-Am recalled the earlier events, causing her to grit her teeth and curse, she couldn't believe that knights, who were supposed to serve the people, had abandoned their own people, it was shameful, pathetic, and ugly. Azadin spoke up, explaining to her that perhaps they were from Wybris, but instead of abandoning those they were supposed to protect, it seemed they believed they were doing something wonderful. Mid-I-Am was startled. She exclaimed, now carefully considering, she thought, I guess so, it's strange that an Aragasa would sympathize with someone from Wybris. They continued walking, but Azadin stopped and said ambiguously, it's all right, I feel the same way. His body dissolved into the air, returning to his ghostly spirit form, let's part ways here, he said. Mid-I-Am and Ishmael were surprised, before they could react, Azadin had vanished without a trace. They helplessly exclaimed in the quiet night, wait, sir, where are you going? Meanwhile, inside the castle, a bright light still blazed. A simple army, equipped with meager weapons, was formed. He fearfully said to the warrior beside him, Captain, the number of monsters before us is truly immense. The leader looked up too, so many. It opened its sharp mouth, drooling, and said, I am Goldu. Then he put down the wooden barrel he was carrying with a loud thud. A limp arm dangled out from the barrel. Goldu stammered, we need meat, to eat, for a long, long time, we need, intelligent orgs. He pointed towards the castle, drops of blood fell from his arm. Goldu lifted its foot, its body was surprisingly large. Then it stamped its foot, causing the ground to sink. In the monster's head, there was only one thing, more meat. The group of soldiers, led by the warrior, began to knock their arrows, that's their leader. The flimsy arrows flew, propelled by the efforts of the commoners. The number of arrows increased, some flying off course and plunging into the ground. Goldu was in front, so it took many hits, but a masked monster was hiding behind it and laughing cunningly. He was the true leader, and he ordered the lower-level goblins, go, use this opportunity to break down the gate. The horde of monsters surged forward with a fierce and bloodthirsty momentum, menacing the people. The team captain immediately shouted, defend the gate, shoot the ones approaching. The arrows continued to fly, but the monsters even had shields to block the attacks. One monster, wielding an axe, opened its sharp mouth and raised its weapon. Powerful blows landed on the flimsy wooden gate, increasing the danger. The largest monster even picked up a boulder. It was huge, it hurled the boulder at the gate, creating a large hole. Those inside desperately tried to block the gate, but they couldn't withstand the destruction, the monsters were breaking through. At this moment, the commander fell into panic, he continuously shouted, shoot, kill them. Ces father was still straining to draw his bow, he thought of his daughter. Sweat poured down his face, fear welled up in his mind, run far away, he thought. The battle had begun, but the masked monster remained seated behind the large barrel, holding its staff. A violent energy emanated from the staff, causing it to blaze. The goblin stared in astonishment. Then he raised the staff, and its power erupted in a blinding light. The goblin rejoiced and exclaimed, "The staff has responded to the Saint King's book." While he was rejoicing, Azadin appeared from nowhere and kicked him in the head. "The Saint King's book is nearby," he said. He used the barrel as a springboard. He leaped, vaulting over the huge Goldu, and entered the fierce battle. The Golda monster threw a large boulder, sending it soaring high. The archers were frightened, they hesitated and retreated. As the boulder fell, Azadin rushed forward and pulled the two archers back. When he finished, he put them on the ground, surprising both the captain and the two. "Azadin brought the mask back to you now in a different capacity and asked me to help everyone guard the gate." The captain was wary and asked him, "Who are you?" Azadin took out his bow, stringing it, "Just a messenger of the emperor passing through." Those present exclaimed upon hearing his name, "A messenger of the emperor, you mean the imperial messengers." Azadin, without a word, leaped down towards the monsters wreaking havoc below. He turned and shot 2 arrows into Goljuo's eyes. The monster was slow and unable to dodge. The arrows pierced his eyes, causing him to roar in agony. Enraged, he slammed his arm into the ground, and his fellow monsters around him cried out, "We'll kill you." The large, dim-witted monster continued to scream. Azadin calmly replied from above, "Kill me, kill all of you, I'll kill all of you." Goljuo stomped on the ground, trampling his fellow monsters in his blindness. Azadin used the monster as cover, continuing to raise his bow, right, using it for movement, excellent. His arrows possessed a different power altogether, a single touch was enough to fell a monster. The captain, watching from the wall, wondered, is he really a sacred, death-dealing spirit? A sudden movement caused the barrel next to Go Kinhort to shake. Azadin turned and saw the thief crawling out from among the corpses. Isn't that the thief from before? His body was torn and covered in blood, he glared upwards, resentful. His eyes fell upon something that made them widen in shock. The goblin was not yet dead, it staggered to its feet. Its mouth twisted into a wide grin as it mumbled, "The Saint King's book." Drool poured uncontrollably from its mouth, while Go Kinhort laughed maniacally. Its arms swelled and changed, forming the King of Bloodfangs, a grotesque mass of flesh sprouting from the monster's arm. It had countless mouths, each filled with sharp teeth. The monstrous thing opened its maw in hungry anticipation. While the leader monster gleefully proclaimed, "I shall be the King of Bloodfangs." Azadin shot an arrow, sending its head flying. But it wasn't over, he stared in astonishment at what had fallen. What is that? The writhing mass of flesh on the ground was horrifying. This will be difficult to deal with. The mass contracted, then launched its heads, attempting to parasitize other monsters. The amorphous red thing, with numerous eyes and teeth, extended tendrils, lunging forward. Azadin leaped away from Goljuo just as the grotesque thing lunged towards him. It wrapped around him tightly. Its spines tore into Goljuo, it used its sharp teeth to inflict even more horrific damage. He screamed in agony, struggling to escape, it hurts so much. I like to eat, I don't like being eaten." Before he could finish his sentence, Goljuo was dead. The horrifying thing grew even larger, he prepared himself. Facing them, the people on the wall turned pale, stammering, that's. Azadin calmly continued, "The Goblin King of Bloodfangs." The red mass shifted slightly, a goblin suddenly emerged. It had evolved into a new form, still ugly, but its lower body was now several tentacles. A blinding light shot from afar, directly at Azadin's heart. He touched his chest, a question mark forming in his mind. A cunning goblin, delighted, servant of the Yaegas, hand over the Saint King's book, do so, and I will kill you quickly and painlessly. Before he could finish his sentence, something flew past him. Azadin strongly held the bow and shot but still could not hide his trembling when shooting the bow. The goblin roared in fury, "You dare!" He didn't notice, his mind preoccupied with the thought, what was that light just now? It pointed to the Saint King's book, didn't it? The creature controlling the red tentacle lunged towards him. Azadin silently wondered, it's perplexing, why are these guys after the Saint King's book? He didn't waste a second, the tentacles, relentlessly, lunged at him wherever he was, friend or foe. Its brethren ignored the purple org screaming in agony. The goblin was furious, insolent, the arms grew stronger, accelerating their pursuit. Eliminate all obstacles ahead. Azadin threw his sword, piercing the tentacle blocking his path. He slowly drew his sword. He paused, gathering momentum, then spun powerfully. Azadin skillfully dodged the horrifying red appendages. His face tightened in grim determination. With one stroke, he sliced through the mass of thorns on its body. Following through, Azadin chopped off a second thorn. Thorns thudded to the ground. He turned, assessing, those fangs are too large for its body. Azadin stood majestically in the strong wind, fangs without roots, strong teeth are weak. The goblin, enraged by his taunts, continued to advance the monstrous maws. Silence, I am the king of Bloodfangs. Azadin scoffed, no, you're not, you're just a useless kinsman created by the king of Bloodfangs. He charged, focusing on severing the projectiles of purple fluid, which corroded his sword. Azadin tossed it aside, not surprising, with such vile poison, even steel would melt. Unable to bear it any longer, the goblin acted on its own, dragging the writhing mass behind it. Die. Even in danger, he thought, I'm not getting paid for this, it's a loss. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed from somewhere, launching a volley of arrows. The goblin found itself on the defensive, facing a barrage of arrows. The soldiers on the wall scrambled to assist. Fire, we must help the envoy. One soldier hesitated, another, sweating profusely, urged, if the king's church hears about this, we'll be severely punished. He suddenly shouted, the king's church has abandoned us. A soldier boldly declared, who's going to punish us? A nearby archer was drenched in sweat, his teeth gritted. He was CE's father. Trembling, he said, I don't want to die here. Though his face was pale with fear, he tried to shoot, we're just attacking the monsters, after we kill them, we can deal with the envoy. The others gained confidence, right, attack the monsters first. A volley of arrows flew from the city walls. The goblin could only stand and endure. Azadin breathed a sigh of relief, they left the arrows to me, good. Now serious, Azadin began to limber up, all right, then. He picked up a thorn, guess I'll start too. Azadin charged towards the goblin. He smiled triumphantly, that's enough for now. Azadin continued collecting thorns. Continuously throwing a series of spikes like bombs with amazing destructive power. The goblin could only rage under the assault, you dare. He calmly said that they were Nguyen's fangs and I just gave them back, why are you so impatient? He still has the stubborn dream that I will become the king of fangs and blood and I will become a greater creature. This time, you held a huge thorn. You threw it straight at his face. Azadin picked up another one, by chance, I became the sacred killer star. This throw severed his head from his body. His upper half rolled wildly across the ground. The thorn pierced the goblin's forehead. Even so, he could still open his eyes. That grotesque red thing of the Kin CT was slowly falling apart, piece by piece, it was over. Azadin bent down and picked up the staff. A loud voice called from behind, outsider, heretic. A group of people on the wall of the room had arrows pointed at them, they sent one person out to wave his hand. Azadin put away his staff, too bored to speak, rude, he thought, they might accidentally shoot an arrow. The leader of the group spoke, what are you doing, why did you wipe out those monsters like that? Those beside him couldn't stay still, they were in an uproar, saying, he must be the one who brought those monsters, that's right. The archer on the left was sweating profusely, his bow was drawn, how could those monsters suddenly appear, it's unbelievable. Azadin stood below, expressionless, listening to them shout about it all being the fault of the heretic. He just silently watched. They continued, their anger growing. The monsters suddenly appeared. It's so unusual, it's all that damn cursed fellow's fault. That soulless heretic. Azadin awkwardly scratched his face. I don't know why the monster appeared. You looked dangerous, making the group wary. They all aimed their bows at you. Everyone knows this. I'm just fulfilling my duty, as the Emperor's gold coin dictates. He continued, perhaps someone truly wished for everyone's sake. They all flinched. What? The leading commander asked. A wish sent to the devil, the gold coin. They buzzed with discussion. That means a villager did it. But who? I know we're struggling, but a wish to the messenger guild. Suddenly, Cet's father shouted, one of us, Azadin. I don't care much, and perhaps you don't either. I'm not obligated to say, nor do I have the authority. He gritted his teeth, looking at you. Azadin politely asked, may I leave? You stood proudly in the night wind, under the moonlight, Azadin shining like a star, or do you want to fight me for the king's church? They couldn't stop being on guard against you. Each person had different emotions and expressions as they listened to Azadin, despite having been exploited and abandoned by a noble's bastard child. The archer with a ponytail angrily shouted, don't slander our faith. Azadin, hands on hips, said, of course, you're all faithful citizens. A bloody man crawled out of an iron crate. It's over, it's really over. He glanced sideways. Horror, he was still alive. The moonlight illuminated Azadin's face. He turned to look. Be merciful, you have been given a second chance to live. He burst into tears, his tears streaming down. You leaped up. Azadin climbed the city wall. Those above froze in surprise. The leader loudly ordered, stop, don't attack. You climbed down. Taking a few arrows. Azadin took them, asking, I'm only taking a few arrows. That's all right, right? Unexpectedly, the leader said, thank you. You smiled and ran down. How foolish. If someone else heard that, he would be executed. The scene changed. It was still night, but the setting shifted to a windy field. There was the sound of footsteps rushing away. Azadin and his owl rushed forward. The owl turned to him, gold coins, you're such a smooth liar. He calmly replied, otherwise, they'd live in fear for being associated with me. Azadin flew at top speed without stopping. Suddenly, the owl asked a pointed question, don't you hate them? They treated you that way, despite you slaying monsters for them. He didn't hold a grudge. They're weak, but they were kind when I pretended to be blind. They deserve praise. Azadin grimaced, sweat dripping. Man, I'm exhausted. I traveled all this way, fought, and didn't get a single gold coin. Seriously. He seemed to have noticed something. There was a light ahead. The figures were unclear, but it seemed to be two people, or two small creatures. Ishmael, from afar, exclaimed joyfully, Azadin, Azadin, you're here. Surprised exclamations rang out. What, a tribesman? You defeated a Kurt tribesman. Ishmael and Mid-Iam were shocked. Azadin seemed nonchalant. I'm not that strong. Ishmael slumped, dejected. He felt it was unfair. You wasted your energy, and didn't even get a single gold coin. Azadin seemed to be consoling himself. Mid-Iam said, protecting and helping the people is a good thing. He shrugged, life without beauty is meaningless. Mid-Iam chuckled, teasing Ishmael. Ishmael's never been interesting. Ishmael's tears welled up. Mid-Iam, Mid-Iam. Azadin turned and asked, you managed to separate the evacuees to let you two go. Mid-Iam happily explained, they tried to stop us at first, but I said we'd defeat the weaker monsters, so they let us go. Ishmael added, they're good people, they even gave us this torch. I guess they didn't know we're Aragasa. She confidently crossed her arms, and because I'm too beautiful. Azadin chuckled, oh, is that so? Not because you're a child, but because you're beautiful, right? Of course. Midiam's probably embarrassed and angry. I'm 13, in the north, a queen my age is already married. He presented a staff. Mid-Iam, do you recognize this? Mid-Iam curiously accepted it. A magic staff, Azadin added, a Kurt tribesman wielded it. She examined the staff. I'll need to concentrate, I'm really exhausted. Mid-IM seemed to realize something. Her eyes sparkled. So you're acknowledging me as your subordinate, he sighed. You don't think I'd ask that of a tribesman. Mid-IM seized the opportunity, then, in return, help me with something, Azadin conceded, you can check it tomorrow. He leaped onto a tree, observing Mid-IM below. Where to? Where are we going? He turned. I'm in a hurry, follow me. She asked in surprise, why are we in such a hurry? A group of people, old and young, carrying luggage, were moving through the forest at night. A woman in the group noticed something. She saw Azadin behind a bush. How long have you been here? She approached with a lantern, her children searching for him. Azadin grimaced slightly. I got lost for a while. They're clever kids, they'll catch up, more importantly. He changed the subject. I heard cheers of victory from the village. The woman looked puzzled. What? Azadin smiled brightly. You know, I have excellent hearing. I think everyone can return to the village now. He suggested ways she could contact them, using lantern signals. The woman was still uncertain. Well. Suddenly, an old man's voice came from behind. From the village in the distance, bright lights, cheers of joy, the lanterns at the gate are lit, the protective council must have succeeded. Everyone rejoiced and cheered. Azadin suggested she send a small group to check first. The woman happily agreed. When she turned back, he was gone. She was bewildered. Where is he? Azadin, having changed his clothes, was sprinting away. Sweat dripping, he felt exhausted. I'm so sick of this, I feel like I could sleep forever if I lay down now. In the distance, he saw smoke rising. That smoke. Azadin stopped and turned towards the smoke. The scene changes to where the smoke rises to show some army camping in this mountain range. In a certain corner, two soldiers were guarding and talking to each other. There was a drought and an org, but the Marquis was still looking for the Holy King's book instead of protecting the people. I see this country is done. The person beside me laughs slyly. Let's pull off a big score and leave. If we're hired longer, the fee increases, so it's perfect. Azadin, in the distance, watches their every move. That must be where the runaway brat is camping. Pay attention to a tent with few guards. Azadin's eyes are drawn to a wooden chest full of fine fabrics and expensive goods. Azadin looks longingly. I'm broke. The owl beside him seems to agree. You've hit the jackpot, Azadin. He stares, pondering. I need money, and traveling costs a lot. Dawn breaks, and someone shouts, you're mocking me. Atarkiv scowls. You let the collected goods get stolen, that's what I hired you for. The soldiers gather, explaining, we were ambushed, we didn't even have time to react. He turns to the man leisurely peeling an apple. Say something, it's your responsibility. The man continues peeling and eating his apple. If you say so, then it must be my fault. Atarkiv points at two soldiers. I'll deduct their pay. You have nothing to complain about, right? The other man doesn't care, whatever. He drops the apple, picks up his knife, and slowly stands. However, one of my belongings is also missing. This isn't the work of an ordinary thief. Atarkiv asks, what did you lose? The scarred-eyed man is slightly annoyed. I can't reveal that. Atarkiv doesn't press further. Then it's not important, forget it. The scarred-eyed man approaches Atarkiv. The notorious Dan man will go to the next village. Please use your authority to order reinforcements there. Atarkiv is startled, looking at him. What? The nearest village is a public forest station, that's managed by nobles, it'll be difficult. Atarkiv is annoyed, pointing at the scarred-eyed man. Why should I do that? Are you ordering me around? He smiles. Fine. Suddenly, Atarkiv's face darkens. The scarred-eyed man continues, then I'll use your name to loot that place. At the same time, he stabs Atarkiv in the stomach. Atarkiv doesn't react in time, panicking and trembling. You villain. The soldiers behind rush forward, shouting Captain. The scarred-eyed man smiles brightly. Don't worry. A purple smoke emanates from the sword. It's a gift from a witch. The sword transforms into a black spider. It crawls into a Tarkiv's shirt. He turns pale with fear. The spider just went in. The scarred-eyed man laughs gleefully. You're all right now, aren't you? A Tarkiv angrily turns. What did you do? The man whistles lightly. A Tarkiv's eyes bulge. He clutches his stomach, falling down and screaming in agony. The scarred-eyed man watches calmly, saying, Calm down, Sir Tarkiv. He laughs loudly. The spider inside you just gave a little pinch. The scarred-eyed man smirks. From now on, you'll obey me, otherwise, the spider will start laying eggs inside you. When they hatch, it'll be a beautiful sight. Tarkiv tries to get up, his face purple. What do you want from me? The surrounding soldiers are sweating with fear, unable to move. He puts his hand on Tarkiv's shoulder. He laughs, staring at Tarkiv's shoulder. I'll loot the public forest station and catch the rat who stole my things. Tarkiv is terrified, sweating profusely. The scene changes to a desolate wasteland. Ishmael and Mid-Iam are sleeping under a tree. An owl on a branch acts as an alarm clock. 4 a.m., wake up. Mid-Iam stretches comfortably. They are still drowsy and half asleep. Mid-Iam notices Azadin. She sees him holding 2 staves. You have 2 staffs. He told me about his exploits yesterday when he stole supplies from the mercenaries. I discovered it. Azadin gave the staff with the purple gem to Mid-Iam. This is exactly the same as the one the wizard Golan used. Please take a look at it for me. Ishmael quickly snatched it. Leave it, I'll take a look, it might be cursed. He channeled his energy to examine it. Azadin, standing at a distance, asked Mid-Iam beside him, What do you see? She recounted what she saw. I see a dark and green spiritual image. You mused, if it were the King of Fangs, it would be red mana. Could it belong to another Kurt? No, Ishmael is about to sense the staff's function. Finally, he found the answer, to find a specific target. Ishmael added, it's designed to point at something, but it's not durable, it breaks easily. He returned the staff to Azadin. However, its creator was a significant figure. It seems to have been hastily made, yet its capabilities surpass most magical tools. Azadin took back the staff, thinking, a magical staff created to track down copies of the Saint King's book. Then there are more than just these few. This means I'll have to deal with more trackers from now on. He continued to focus on the smoke still rising in the distance. Let's see who lost this item. The army on this side remained still. Azadin sat in a tree, looking down to scout the situation. This is troublesome. He observed the soldiers. The atmosphere had changed overnight. Some were polishing swords, others armor. They were preparing for battle. Azadin recalled the image of the goblins. Their purpose must also be to collect copies. He gritted his teeth, annoyed, watching them. We guessed they'd act after losing the staff, but I didn't expect them to resort to force. A voice asked, What's the situation? Mid-Iam and Ishmael waited below for his report. She asked, What do you see? Azadin climbed down from the tree. Their next move is an attack. Mid-Iam was astonished. A village, a public forest station. Ishmael was equally surprised. That village is much larger than the usual ones. She propped her chin in her hand, thinking, they wouldn't act so rashly, unless they have another reason to hurry. Azadin simply said, Perhaps. The 3 continued their journey on foot through the forest. Azadin disposed of the staff and the invisibility paper. Before them, the large city was visible. The sky was turning the color of twilight. People were bustling in and out of the city gate, with guards constantly watching. Their gaze seemed very strict. Finally, the 3 reached a public resting place. A gate guard asked, Blind person, all right, be careful. Azadin smiled and thanked him. Mid-Iam is very sympathetic to the guards here. They actually let blind pilgrims pass for free. Ishmael feels a bit guilty even though we tricked them there. And first is the marketplace. Mid-Iam and Ishmael seems very interested and excited. Ishmael points in front. That is the cart of the Song Khorassar Goods Association. Mid-Iam is excited to finally rest then face. The sky is gradually setting. The sunset light feels very warm. Azadin was interested, the merchant guild. They continued their journey. A past scene flashed back, a blond boy, arrogant and boastful, saying, "You're the youngest messenger." He didn't seem to like the messenger. "You're just the child of a trader, don't be so arrogant." Thoughts of that time flooded back, the greatest genius of his people, becoming a messenger at the age of 3, that's what the adults called him then, a rail. Derek, severely injured in his leg, was terrified and trembling. "I learned that reality as a child, a broken ankle, but it wasn't just that." He gritted his teeth and looked at the person in front of a rail who was more than just. That figure was Azadin as a child, still looking so cold. Derek looked up in admiration at such a powerful person. Back to reality. Derek woke up. He muttered. Suddenly, a strange sound outside caught his attention. What was that? The scene shifted. Not long before, this place had been crowded, lively, everyone happy and smiling. The brown flag, with the symbol of a horse and forest wings, was the flag of the Khorasan Merchant Guild. According to the records, it started as a small merchant group, but it grew and is now known as a large organization in Khorasan. The group of 3, including Azadin, drew attention wherever they went. They carried only simple hunting equipment like bows, arrows, and swords. However, in reality, it was one of the shadow organizations run by the Messenger Guild, in other words, the Aragasa people. Wherever he went, people seemed to avoid him, therefore, all the members of the guild were Aragasa people. Azadin awkwardly scratched his neck. He thought it would be good to hide today, but Mid-Iam behind him was very excited to finally take a bath. Suddenly there was a voice coming from behind someone. A group of 3 approached, looking rather unpleasant. "Isn't this the famed Azadin, one of the 108 spirits, enjoying your 3 months of pretending to be a messenger?" Azadin remained silent, looking down. The group, oblivious, continued, "Only 3 months and you already have servants, quite the talent, huh?" Ishmael and Mid-Iam were already annoyed with them. "Ignore them," Azadin said, "these brats aren't my servants, forget it. Help me change the goat's hooves, can you do that?" The person with the ponytail pressed on, of course, if you've spoken, we must do it." Azadin only cared about the main objective. "Exchange this for money. If you have any Green River arrows, give them to me." The men laughed crudely, mocking him. "Didn't you become a messenger through Kosas's recommendation? No official process, yet here you are, a complete failure during training." They received the items and then openly insulted him, using incredibly foul language. They brought expensive goods, probably pilfered along the way. "What a top-notch messenger. I also need to change my clothes, lend me some, and while you're at it, can you wash these clothes?" Ishmael whispered to Mid-Iam, "I suspected it, but it's truly awful." She glared at the group. Regardless of Azadin's background, he's still a messenger. Assisting messengers is their duty. They threw the items over. "Here, Azadin, plenty of clothes to change into." It was a woman's dress. His face darkened. He seemed to have reached his limit. "Enough with the childish games, I don't want to deal with you." The group was still unaware of the danger before them. "What's this guy yapping about?" They stepped forward, shouting in Azadin's face, "You think we're playing servant? You're so great, huh? If it weren't for luck, you'd never have been chosen as one of the 108 spirits." A voice interrupted, "If you're so bothered, why not settle it with a duel?" The arrogant group froze. The speaker approached, taunting them, "Or are you afraid of the dangers of a duel?" Mid-Iam smirked contemptuously, "So much talk from you lot." Azadin broke into a sweat, thinking to himself, the dangers of a duel aren't something she should be mentioning. The brown-haired person continued to talk. "What's this little girl saying? That guy can't take a punch." She laughed scornfully. "Is that so?" Suddenly, a red streak descended from the sky, landing right where they stood. In a flash, Mid-Iam leaped onto one of the men, a knife to his throat. He broke out in a cold sweat, trembling. "What are you doing, you little girl?" She glared at him. "Don't you realize the situation you're in? I'm a descendant of Ether, a lowly servant dares to make such sarcastic remarks." Mid-Iam pressed the knife closer, her face dark as she glared at him. "Or are you not, Messenger Azadin? Step forward, don't use your poisonous words, prove yourself with action. He remained defiant. Can't take a punch, you dare to look down on a messenger, you fools, have you forgotten your duties? The surrounding people gathered, watching. The men stammered, unable to speak. No, we. Footsteps approached from somewhere. Ishmael turned in surprise. Mid-Iam also noticed. Derek appeared, calming everyone. Now, things seem a bit too tense here. He smiled, looking kindly at Azadin. Long time no see. Azadin coldly grunted. He turned to Mid-Iam. What's your name? She didn't hide it. Mid-Iam, of the Ether family. Derek smiled. I'm Derek, of the Savan family. I apologize on behalf of my companions. Please stop, I don't want bloodshed within the same clan. She stopped, withdrawing her knife. Mid-Iam jumped back to Azadin's side. The brown-haired man gritted his teeth. I've already bled. He was slightly more composed. Derek's face turned serious. He admonished the two men, Vito and Sarek, uphold your guild duties. He passed Azadin, go bathe and then come over, at least we can have dinner together. Azadin thinks, what's the point of all this trouble? But what he said aloud was different. In a small hut, Azadin, having just finished bathing, was drying his hair. A tub bath after so long felt refreshing. Ishmael called to him, Azadin, you're still just standing there. Even considering your background, Arail, your blood relative, is highly revered. Ishmael knew a lot. I've heard anyone who dares to challenge or criticize her will immediately pay the price. Azadin, putting on his clothes, said, Arail has her own way of handling things. Ishmael had to agree, you really are a strange person. Azadin didn't care much about the judgment. Go outside, persuade Mid-Iam to separate from you. Azadin lifted the curtain, glancing inside, otherwise, you'll become as strange as me. The scene shifts to a different place, larger and more luxurious. The table was laden with a plentiful spread of delicious food. Azadin was astonished, frozen in place. Eric hesitated. Have you heard from Arail? Eric was angry. You don't even care about your sister. Are you trying to justify that? Considering her abilities, she doesn't need to be worried about. He said with surprise that he couldn't believe he even came here, and the association member added that Azadin didn't seem to hear a word. He only cared about the apple in front of him. Eric quickly grabbed the whole basket of apples. He lifted it, causing Azadin to drop the apple on the table. I told you to start talking about your results. He retorted, I'm doing my job properly. I'm collecting gold coins too. Eric changed the subject. Forget that, I'm talking about business. What about attacking other merchant guilds to control them? Azadin sighed and let DCK watch this first. He produced the purple orb staff he'd obtained earlier. Have you ever seen anything like this? He relayed what he knew. Some bishops use this tool to find copies of the Saint King's book. As far as I know, the Ether lady delivered the regional leader's letter to you, so that's why she was summoned, right? Azadin can be sure that it seems like everyone knows that Eric is fed up with his friend. If he doesn't report to the regional leader, then of course he's the only one who doesn't know, right? He was thinking of the benefits. Bringing this back is a great contribution, although it would be best if you could bring back a copy of the Saint King's book. Azadin reached for an apple. I brought one. Eric's eyes widened in surprise. Had his casual remark become the truth? He chuckled. Guess what, the other messengers came back empty-handed, huh? He held Eric's wrist tightly. Urgently looked straight at him and seriously told Azadin to hand over the copy. Azadin was stunned, unable to process the information, frozen for a few seconds. The scene inside the city was bustling with people coming and going, trading and exchanging goods under the twilight sky. Mid-Iam and Ishmael were outside checking their mounts suddenly. They both jumped at a loud shout from inside Azadin's tent. Derek stood up abruptly. He was panting after shouting so loudly. Azadin didn't react, still holding the red apple. Derek gritted his teeth, looking at him with intense displeasure. Are you saying you don't trust us? We can protect the copy of the Saint King's book far better than someone without your power. Azadin asked him a question. don't you think that will make it more difficult for you guys? He leisurely took a bite of the apple and told him the information he had that one of Marquis Cazel's illegitimate sons and his group of mercenaries were on their way here. Among them there were evil cultists who worshipped Kurt. Derek pointed at himself and confidently asserted, "You think we'll lose to them? Maybe. I lost to a rail, but I'm still a former messenger." Azadin emphasized his point, "That's the problem. Don't you think there will be strange rumors when a group of merchants fights so well?" Derek ignored his colleague, "That's not important, protecting the copy of the Saint King's book is." Then he pointed at Azadin and said, "Besides, you're too weak compared to a rail." Azadin rubbed his head, dejected, "You're comparing us like when we were kids again." Azadin, the soulless one, knew very well he was no match for a rail when they were children. A rail, back then, was already a warrior respected by many, far stronger than Azadin at the time, but now a rail was the strongest warrior in the clan with countless followers. Those cold eyes could intimidate anyone, and Azadin had been wary of her for years. Not seeing her for so long, he couldn't imagine how strong she had become. He turned away and made a decision, "Anyway, I'll deliver the copy to the regional leader myself, that's best." Derek wasn't pleased. "You impudent brat, I'm your senior." Suddenly, someone lifted the tent flap and said, Sir, we have trouble." He hurriedly reported the news and both of them turned to look at him at the east gate. The sun was setting, giving way to night. At a large city gate, soldiers were still on duty. Before that, the east gate, a public forest station. Suddenly Jiran saw something in the distance and hummed. Tarkiv's group had arrived, he observed and noted, "They have weapons." According to the rules, he stopped them, "Wait, you're too many to enter at this hour, camp somewhere and come back tomorrow." Tarkiv smiled amiably and rummaged in his bag, "You work diligently, Sir Jiran." He whispered to Jiran, offering a bribe, "Consider this a token of appreciation for your hard work." The warrior Jiran raised his eyebrows and replied, "You're putting me in an awkward position. He knows you're a knight too." Tarkiv shrugged, unconcerned, "If anything happens, we'll both become priests of the king's church. We're in this together." The warrior gradually agreed, "If you put it that way." He was still smiling when suddenly a sword pierced his eye, "Then I guess." The man with Tarkiv pulled out the sword, blood spurting everywhere. Jiran's body fell, his head hitting the ground, blood gushing out to Tarkiv's surprise. He was terrified, his heart pounding in shock. Other soldiers immediately attacked the gate guards. A chaotic scene of slaughter ensued. Tarkiv exclaimed to the knight, "I don't want him dead." The other calmly said, "You should cheer up, young master, a raid won't be interesting if you don't do this." Tarkiv kept shouting that he was making it difficult for himself. There were 3 gates here, but their attitude was completely opposite as that person kept reassuring him that there was nothing to worry about. He looked at his palm. The knight's face had a scar that stretched halfway across his face. His hands grow holes for little spiders to crawl out of. Then he gently blew the spiders away with the wind and flew towards the enemy. Soldiers and ordinary people were immediately frightened by the tiny insect clinging to them and looked at the spiders. The spiders bit and tore at their clothes, sinking their fangs into their flesh, causing them to cry out in pain. The bodies of those people contorted violently as the spider venom took effect. Tarkiv gasped in horror and recoiled. The others soon stabilized. Those who had been affected suddenly returned to normal, confused and disoriented. "I was filled with power," and the mysterious knight smiled. At that moment, Tarkiv understood how terrifying the man before him was. He was the heretic Kurt. He laughed with delight and replied, "Finally, you've realized." However, the heretic didn't eliminate Tarkiv. Instead, he offered a proposition, "Cooperation, young master, it benefits us both. I get the Saint King's book, and you get your revenge." Then he suddenly burst into laughter, his face darkening, but still unable to hide the terrifying madness in his eyes. He blew another small gust of wind, guiding his tiny creatures away. They burrowed into Jakip's clothing, causing his flesh to swell and lump. Tarkiv collapsed to his knees, his body trembling with fear, spitting out a mouthful of saliva. He had no choice. Those who had been previously infected stared blankly at the heretic. The heretic curt ordered them, from now on, no one is allowed to leave this village. He simply stood there and gave a small command, and all those people surged forward. Inside the town, the villagers' huts remained. A man, with his backpack slung over his shoulder, prepared to leave. When he stepped outside, he was met with a tumultuous crowd at the gate. He approached and asked, "What's going on?" The angry people replied, "These guys won't let us leave the village." A villager pointed at them and angrily asked, "Why can't we go?" The man, using his large body to intimidate the weaker ones, replied mechanically, "Because we said so." The man remained unafraid and said, "You have no right to stop us." Then, he deliberately pushed past them, saying, "Get out of my way, I have to go, you're just mercenaries." The mercenaries' arms, bulging with veins, seized the man's head. He easily lifted the ordinary man and said again, "I said no one is allowed to leave, didn't I?" "No one." Their brutal behavior panicked the others, who quickly fled. The two mercenaries looked at the trembling man in their grasp and whispered to each other, "Something strange, really strange." Saliva dribbled from his mouth, along with an unseen hunger. "I'm so hungry." The man's eyes widened as he saw spiders pouring from the mercenary's body. The man's mouth ripped open, revealing bizarre teeth and unusually bright blue eyes. The innocent villager quickly closed his eyes and struggled. Suddenly, an arrow flew and pierced something, making a small sound. The hands gripping the man's face loosened, causing him to open his eyes in surprise. The mercenary in front of him had been struck by an arrow and was falling backward. Blood spurted out, further terrifying the man. He didn't dare blink as he looked ahead. The mercenary's tongue was severed, and his face contorted in pain. Next, Azadin appeared, directly kicking the large mercenary to the ground and then stabbing him in the head with a long stick. The man fell to the ground with a thud. The two mercenaries were dealt with and lay on the ground. Azadin pulled out the sharp stick, blood stained it from tip to haft. Small spiders began to crawl on his weapon, emerging from the blood. Azadin recognized the familiar characteristic. He muttered to himself, "They're the Spider Queen's minions."